Pistols, released in 2022 based on the infamous punk band the Sex Pistols, a 6-part limited series that is based off of Steve Jones' memoir, Lonely Boy Tales from the Sex Pistols. Now, the show is a dramatization of the British punk band's rise to fame and traces how the working class outsiders become one of music's most disruptive forces. But what's interesting about this show is how it emphasizes one thing: the Sex Pistols did not invent rage, they inherited it from their childhood. Now, the band shared experiences of growing up poor, unwanted, and unheard in post-war Britain is what made this band so dangerous and disruptive. But that's kind of how it works, isn't it? Revolutions expand, start, and explode through the use of art, music, and fashion, and that's what they use to push forward the agenda. It is a technique that has been used and proven to be most effective, and the Sex Pistols use their music as a raw outlet for their lives shaped by neglect, instability, and resentment towards authority. Each band member has a story, and each one is just as heartbreaking as the next. Steve Jones' upbringing was defined by neglect and abandonment, and that he was pretty much like left to fend for himself. He turned a life of petty crime in order to survive. And then we have Johnny Rotten, who did grow up poor with health conditions that altered his personality, leaving him bitter, sarcastic, skeptical, and deeply resentful of society's elite. Of course, we have Paul Cook. He grew up in the working class family where expectations were limited and opportunities were scarce. Glenn Matlock. He was the original bass player. He sort of differed slightly from the rest of the group because he lived in a pretty stable home. He had formal music training, but unfortunately this kind of contributed to his alienation within the band and ultimately his removal. And then finally, the last member, we have Sid Vicious, who was raised in unstable conditions by a struggling heroin addict who did supply him with drugs when he was 14 years old, by the way. He had no consistency, no structure. He had no real adult supervision, and that pretty much led him down a destructive path into drug abuse and a desperate need for validation and a sense of belonging. The show is tragic, it's honest, heartbreaking, and impactful, but personally, I really liked it. I also really liked Johnny Rotten. I liked the actor who brought him to life in this show, but fair warning for this show: there is a lot of adult content, there's a lot of sex, drugs, alcohol, there is childhood sexual abuse, there is neglect, body harm, and so much more. In many ways, it is very honest in the worst way, but that is supposed to be the point. That's exactly what led us to this. The show and the movement, their tragic past create some of the worst outcomes, but it can also lay the foundation to some of the best and most eye-opening testimonies of survival. Pistols is currently streaming for free on Tubi, and I highly recommend it. I watched this show in one setting. I started it today, 6 hours ago, and I barely finished it about 30 minutes ago. I was invested. Highly recommend it. And when you watch it, come back and tell me what you think, because I am now a Sex Pistols fan.